Live from the Coachella Valley, time for another hour of the desert scene. Art exhibitions to modernism, music festivals to live theater, big screen, little screen, and very little screen. This is the Culture Corner with Bonnie Gilgallon and Brayan Mendoza. Here's Bonnie and Brayan on iHub Radio.
And good Saturday morning to you. Welcome to the new 2-hour edition of the Culture Corner. And I'm so excited to be sharing this new 2-hour program with Brayan Mendoza, who bored out for me many times and had his own show called was Flicks and Picks,
yes.
right? Before, and now we've joined forces, and so we're doing a 2-hour version of the Culture Corner, covering everything, theater and music and film and what's going on in the world a little bit too. So, hey, Brayan, welcome.
Hey, I'm so happy to be on here because I've always loved your show. So for me, it's like, it makes sense. Let's get together and actually create some radio magic.
Absolutely. Is there a way to turn my headphones up just a little bit?
Oh, yeah, right there, the button right there. I think.
Check one. There it is. No.
I think that's the first one. Now we're having some bloopers live.
All right, well, I can hear, not just great, but I can hear. Okay, so we're going to talk about a lot of different things today. Some theater, some film, the pandemic, but the culture. The word culture incorporates a lot of stuff. I mean, it's not just theater and film and music and dance. It's also, human nature, what's happening in the world is part of the culture. And unfortunately, what's happening in the world right now is really not great. There's a lot of bad stuff going on.
I would say divisiveness.
Yeah,
especially
absolutely.
Divisiveness. And I think that there's this general... it seems like every 4 years or every 8 years, there's a sort of a big pantheon shift in the culture. So for a lot of people, it's like 8 years ago, they felt welcomed. And now 8 years now, it's like, well, I don't feel so welcomed anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Or some people, certain opinions are now popular when back then they were unpopular. And it's like culture is a much bigger thing than we give it credit for. And I think the arts are a way for us to see the culture for what it is.
I think it's a way to see the culture, to kind of reflect back to us what's happening, how humans are interacting with each other, and sometimes it's uncomfortable, as it should be. That's sometimes the purpose of theater and arts, is to for us to hopefully expand our horizons, learn and grow, and maybe learn about someone else's experience that might not be the same as ours, that hopefully could lead to some more understanding. People, part of the divisiveness, I think, is based on fear, which is based on something that's different, something you don't know about, something that's foreign or different to you. And a lot of times people find that scary, and that sometimes manifests itself as anger and rejection.
No, I definitely agree with that. And the thing about art too is it's a response to things. For example, someone will make an art. Let's say I've seen so many artists who say, I don't really like this political correctness, so I'm going to make something that attacks it. Mm-hmm. Or I don't really like the divisiveness this one person's putting out, so I'm going to make a piece of art or a movie or something to kind of respond to it. And for me, it's like that's both the beauty and sometimes the madness of art is the fact that everyone's going to have a response to something. And the culture, I mean, it's one of those things where culture is ever evolving. It's very difficult to kind of keep track of because, I swear that suddenly I wake up one day and I realize, wow, there's so many plays and movies with people of color. And 8 years ago, I didn't even realize that was even a problem, for example. Or I didn't realize that there was so many movies and TV shows that dissect masculinity, because back then, we had a lot of, in the 80s, for example, there was a lot of action movies with hyper masculine men. But now I watch something on TV and I kind of like it because I didn't relate to those hyper masculine versions. I thought, okay, I'm not.
And a lot of people don't. That's a minority of what men look like,
And for me, it's like, wow, all these TV shows are dissecting that and almost making fun of it because of how ridiculous it is. And that's the thing about culture, is that it's a dissection too. You dissect things and you grow with it. And I think it's fascinating. And that's the thing about, and I think people, when they hear culture, they kind of think pop culture, but even then there's some depth to that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to touch on this several times throughout the show, but one of the big issues, one of the many divisive and depressing and anger-inducing issues that's going on right now is the racial divide in this country, which is worse now than it's ever been. And I think, in my humble opinion, the person in the White House right now has just thrown gasoline on that fire and has just made it okay for some of these ugly speech and ugly actions and even violence against people that are not of your race. And I think before it's like people were in some people were in the shadows before, hiding under rocks, and now all of a sudden it's okay. They're just out there screaming, yelling, running around with their guns, and it's scary and it's really sad.
And one of the things I got to point out is that, without making it too much political, but the thing is, culture in some ways is political. You know, I think that we underestimate that our culture has to include politics in it. And if we don't acknowledge it, it's like, then what are we doing? You know, what are we talking about?
Right.
And one of the things I will say is the fact that there's so much, like you said, so much open racism, but it's also interesting because when you point out that that's openly racist, they say, no, I'm just supporting the police, or I'm supporting this group. And it's like, look, you're not really supporting anybody if you're doing it to attack somebody. And for me, one of the things I've had to explain to people is, you don't want one person to be your judge, jury, and executioner.
No.
And a lot of people justify certain bad things that happen, like the Kyle Rittenhouse situation. And I've seen a lot of, like, to bring it back to art, I've seen a lot of I'm gonna say caricature comics. I don't know how to call it, like political cartoons that kind of paint him as a hero. And I thought, you don't want to live on this street. Like, just go somewhere else. Do not die on this hill, as they would say. If this is the hill you want to die on, don't.
Yeah. Well, and people are forgetting in the heat of all this, you're wrong, I'm wrong, you're wrong, I'm going to punch you, I'm going to shoot you. People are forgetting norms of how society is supposed to interact with each other, and law. The law is you're innocent until proven guilty. Not, we don't like what you did, and so we're going to shoot you in the back 7 times. Or we think maybe you might have done this. Or we think maybe you might have done it. So we're just going to kill you on the street. I mean, people are not supposed to be killed in the process of being arrested.
And the thing is true. And there's one thing I was told by someone: true justice doesn't come when the person who hurt you died. They come when they get a trial and they go through the fairness system. Because the thing is, though, is that so many people don't get a trial and they're innocent. And if we treat guilty people with a trial, then it sets a precedent that innocent people will get a fair shot.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is that a lot of places in the world, like, people think that this is something that happens in the rest of the world. It's really not.
No.
It's
not for the most part. No.
In other countries like Norway and Sweden, they have beautiful prisons. And some people say, beautiful, what are you talking about? Over there, they believe in reforming people. They don't believe in killing people or executing them or basically punishing people. Because for them, it's set up in a way where you can't leave a house, but imagine your house, like a smaller version of your house, where it's like a 1-bedroom apartment. Their prisoners are kept there because the idea is you're going to get help whether or not you like it or not.
Right.
And it's not, we're going to keep you imprisoned. Because if you think about it, if someone goes to prison, and I think everyone's aware how uninspiring prison is.
Yes.
It's not like,
for the most, the problem, some of them are pretty awful, as I understand it. Yeah.
And for me, it's like they call it the prison fallacy, where it's like you don't really want to improve. And I think that we have to kind of push to do better and realize that maybe the rest of the world has it quite on track, because if we think about it, we're so focused on our world problems, we don't see that other places have these solutions. Like, no one else votes for healthcare in other countries. Like, here we have a debate about healthcare, and
it's outrageously expensive, and just inequities are really awful. Yeah.
And in other countries, they don't even, that's not an issue. It's like, it kind of feels like I was cheated a little bit to some extent, because it feels like, wow, we have all this debate about all these things, and maybe we shouldn't have a debate. Maybe it's the answer is right there, and I was kind of gaslit into believing that it's a debate. And it's like, no, I don't think certain things should be a debate. Certain things, we can always improve on things. Let's say if healthcare was really good, and say, let's make it better, rather than should we give people health care or not? You know what I mean? Especially during a pandemic.
And sadly, part of that, the health care issue, sadly comes down to money and certain people in pharmaceutical companies and certain people making piles and piles and piles of money because it is so expensive, which is outrageous. I want to go back to the prisons for a second. You would think that yes, you go to prison, that's punishment. But you would hope if unless they have a life sentence, they're going to come out at some point. And you want to hope that they come out at least somewhat reformed rather than bitter and angry and go out in the street and kill somebody again. And the other thing just flashed in my head. This is a simplistic thing, but I just love this idea. There's a tribe, so I think somewhere in Africa, who when someone in the tribe does something wrong or, errs or whatever, everyone comes to the town, the center of the town, all the people, and that person is in the center. And instead of screaming at them, they all sit there and talk about things that are good about them. What we think is good. You're really this. You have a big heart. You're all the things that are good about this person. And apparently, a lot of times it seems to work when you focus on, hey, you know what? This thing you did wasn't so hot. But, you really are a good person. And I thought, wow, if we could incorporate even just a tiny piece of that into, I know that's not what prison is supposed to be about, but a little bit of reform and learning a new skill and what have you, wouldn't that be better? And certainly you don't just shoot someone on the street in the process of arresting them or stand on their neck or suffocate them with a plastic bag.
No, and especially considering that, I think another thing is that we also have to hold accountable the people that defend those actions, because defending those actions enables them. And the thing is, you do not want to enable the death of a person. That's just not something you should live with. And
Bad
I think
karma.
And for me, that tells me a lot about a lot of my friends. Mm-hmm. It's like, it kind of hurts when you see friends of yours that you thought were really nice and supportive, or even people you work with, and then you see their posts. It's like, really? Like, this is where, at least it tells me who you are. Yeah. But it hurts me to see who you are.
Absolutely. That's one of the really sad things about this whole thing, this divide with Trump is people that sometimes you thought you knew, and all of a sudden you see these posts and you think, wow, their values and their ethics and morals are not quite what I thought they were. And, what's my friendship with them based on? Yeah, it is really sad.
And the thing would be that it kind of makes you look back on interactions and realize, okay, they actually did tell you who they were. They just were scared to tell you. And also because
you didn't want to see it sometimes. Yeah,
that's true. And I like to say the Obama era had the unfortunate thing of making racists kind of hide themselves, because you realize now they're right in the open. It's a lot scarier. Honestly, for me, it's like, I kind of wish they were more out back then, because it wouldn't be as scary. Right. And maybe by this point they would have silenced down a little bit. You know what I mean? Yeah,
it's really sad. Well, I'm praying, I'm hoping, I'm looking forward to November 3rd, and hopefully we'll have a little change. But I think, we've got to start caring about each other, and just not fighting all the time. It's just sad.
I believe that too. Like, I think that we need to just honestly have an open heart in our conversations, because the thing is, though, and also to realize it's okay to criticize bad
civil
things.
Civil way. In
a civil way, it's okay to push back against things that are going to hurt other people. Because the thing is, if you tolerate something that hurts people, you are hurting them. Exactly.
You're somewhat complicit. All right, we're going to talk in just a minute to Robbie Wayne, who is the artistic director of Desert Rose Playhouse, and they've got some bunch of changes coming up. We'll talk to him in just a minute.
You're listening to Bonnie Gilgallon and Brayan Mendoza, talking arts and entertainment on iHub Radio's The Culture Corner. Here are Bonnie and Brayan.
And we are back on The Culture Corner, the new 2-hour version, here with Brayan Mendoza. And we're joined by Robbie Wayne, one of my favorite people, yay, who is the artistic director of Desert Rose Playhouse. And I know he's knee-deep in stage stuff and bar stools and all kinds of stuff. So how's it going? I know you just recently moved from your old location, the commissary, to Palm Springs. I guess it was the old Zelda's building. So tell us about that and how that all came about.
Well, I mean, it's crazy how it all happened. We had rent just adding up at the old location for a building that we couldn't use. And it was just so small. We knew that any kind of show or inside production was just, a long ways off. So rather than, accumulating all of this debt and having to pay this rent, we decided we were going to have to let the venue go. And so we told the landlords on like a Monday that we were going to have to break our lease. We were on a month-to-month because we had been there for several years. But we told the landlord we were going to have to break our lease and move everything into storage to save some money, to try to stop the hemorrhaging of money for no reason. And within 4 or 5 days, my fiance Matt went by the old Zelda's location and saw a for lease sign in the front. And he had been talking about that for about a year, about how great that space was. And so we said, well, let's just give it a walkthrough. We walked in, and the place screams that it is begging to be a theater. The way that it was laid out, just everything there. And so we said, well, let's just see what happens, So we made a video, and we asked for the money to be able to, get everything together and pay the deposit and move. And within 10 days, the community had come together and donated enough money for us to be able to move and take over the lease. And it just all happened like a whirlwind. I mean, it still seems like just a dream, the way that it all happened.
That's great. Brian's got a question for you.
I was going to say, for you in the old space, what does a space mean to you as a creative director? Like for you, how does the old space, like, what does it mean to you, like, as a director?
Well, when we left the old space, I cried a couple of times because there was so many amazing moments in that space, and the challenges were so unique. I mean, the ceilings were only like 8 feet, and we had lights on top of that, and then a stage, and then it was just a tiny space. And it was still like losing an old friend because we had so many amazing memories there. And then to walk into this new space with, 18, 20-foot ceilings high and to see all of this stuff, it's going to be a totally different experience. So there's still a loss of the, like I say, it was like my old friend. There's a loss of the old space, but the creative opportunities in the new space are just so much bigger. I mean, we can really raise the levels of the shows in this new space more so than what we could in the old. But, they still were amazing, both in their own unique ways.
So, Robbie, I know, do you have sort of a timetable? I know you still have a lot of work to do to get both renovating the space, and then, of course, some of it depends on the pandemic and what's happening when the regulations of what can be open and not. Do you have an idea of when you might have an actual season or how that would manifest itself?
I have had a lot of ideas over the last couple of months, and life has said, hold on, that's not happening. This is your reality. So, I'm playing it day by day. We're getting it ready as fast as we can. And then as soon as we feel safe, and that's the thing, it's when we feel safe for us, for our patrons, and for our actors and our cast and crew, when we feel like it's safe for us to come in under whatever regulations and precautions, then that's when we'll open. But, right now, honestly, looking at it, I don't see it happening before December, January.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense because I think everyone in the theater community is really unsure about when we're going to come back, when are we going to be able to have fun and feel safe, because movie productions are coming back and people are getting sick on them.
Yeah.
But you said you had some ideas. Now, here's kind of a question I wanted to ask, but is the year 2020, the political climate and COVID, has it inspired any ideas for future plays that you may have actually?
Well, if not inspired me to do plays, it's definitely given me some insight as to what I think the general public and the community is going to want to come out to see, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I feel personally in our programming coming out of the gate, we're staying away from politics. We're staying away from, disaster themes. We're staying away from all of that because when people go to the theater, I feel like they go there to be taken away from their regular life. I don't want to put on stage what we've been going through for all these many months
Right.
and then just reminisce about that kind of thing.
How
You know?
awful it
So
was.
I've been
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
happy and fun and all of that.
Yeah, I think when theaters reopen, at least for a while, people want to see, stuff like Oklahoma, Little Mary Sunshine, Happy, 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 because that's been too dark for too long.
And
Exactly. So it's gotta be
escapism
bright.
is valid. It's not, you can commentate on the thing that's happening, but escapism is just as valid form of art too.
Yeah, because you got to stay. We don't want to all just want to be slitting our wrists every day. I mean, we got to
Right.
find ways to stay happy now and then.
Yes, exactly. So we in our game plan, everything we're doing is laughter, or it's going to be very light, or it takes you to a whole other place outside of your regular life.
Well, Robbie Wayne, congratulations on the new space. I can't wait till it's all done. We get back in there. Check out Desert Rose Playhouse website and see what's going on. Have fun. Don't work too hard. Okay.
Thank you so much. I can't.
The curtain rises on local and regional arts and entertainment. From music to theater, films to fine art, it's the Culture Corner. Get connected. Call 760-544-TALK. That's 760-544-8255. Here's Bonnie and Brian on iHub Radio.
And we are back on the Culture Corner, our 2-hour version. I'm here with Brayan Mendoza. And now, culture, as we talked about before, is not all arts and entertainment. It's also, to some degree, what's happening in the world. And I'm so really excited after being in radio for, 20-some years. I've never had my sister on one of my shows. My sister, the Reverend Kendyl Gibbons, is joining us. Hey, Kendyl, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Listen, before we get into the nitty-gritty, my sister is a Unitarian minister. She is the minister of the All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church of Kansas City. And I know some of our listeners might not know a lot about Unitarians. So I thought I would have you really briefly explain to people what Unitarians believe.
Sure. The most important thing is that you cannot have a life of spiritual authenticity without being honest with yourself and other people and whatever divine forces you understand there to be about what you really believe. So for us, it does not make sense to go to church or anywhere else and repeat words that you either don't understand what they mean or don't believe what they say. So it's that sense of integrity, and that's why we come from very early Christians who thought that Jesus was a human being, a wise teacher, someone who had a unique relationship with God as he understood him, but not himself divine. And so they were not Trinitarians, they were Unitarians. That's where the name comes from. But the principle is that you have to be honest about what you really believe.
Okay. I love that. That's fabulous. Well, speaking of that, so I'm imagining you're in a kind of a unique position in the middle of this chaos that we are in at the moment in this country. How do you, as a clergy person, a minister, how do you counsel people in your individually or in your congregation to not lose their minds in the middle of all this and stay sane and centered and hold on to whatever spirituality they have?
Right. Well, I think you have to have three things to cope with this kind of unknown situation. And they don't have to be from a church, but that's what a church is for. Mm-hmm. So I think you have to have a set of values. You have to have commitments about the kind of person you want to be in the world. And if you have those commitments, that doesn't change because there's a pandemic. That doesn't change because crazy people are in charge of stuff. I still want to be the kind of person that I said I wanted to be a year ago or 10 years ago or whenever. And even though that evolves and changes as we grow, it changes because of what we learn, not because of what is happening out in the world. So if you have a set of values, a commitment, a picture of what kind of person do you want to be, you hang on to that. You don't throw that out the window because everything is changing around you. The second thing you need is a set of practices. that both practices that are nurturing and comforting to you, and then practices that call you out to make a difference in the world. So, some people garden, some people journal, some people do meditation, whatever that practice is that helps you be in touch with yourself and what gives you strength, you keep that up. You don't let that go, no matter how crummy you're feeling. And even if it doesn't feel like it's productive and it doesn't feel like, it's not making me feel real good at the moment, that doesn't matter. You keep doing it anyway because it's going to nurture you over the long run. And the same thing with the practices that call you out into the world. If you work with feeding the homeless like my husband does, or, if you tutor at the local school, or if whatever it is you do to try and make the world a better place, keep that up. And even though you feel like, well, this is a drop in the bucket, this doesn't really make any difference, it does. It makes a difference to your life and the lives of the people you touch. So you stay with those practices. And then the last thing we all need is community. We need a group of people who are going to know us, who are going to appreciate and support us, who are going to question us when they see something weird going on. And they're going to be there for us when we need them, and they're going to expect us to be there for them when they need something from us. And that keeps us tied to the world. It keeps us tied into our humanity. Even when there's a lot of cruelty, there's a lot of deception, there's a lot of unknown and suspense out there. If in that community, you still can rely on those people. So I think if you have those three things, you will be okay.
And unfortunately, I think the community piece of it is a little harder now because we're can't gather in huge groups and worship together, have parties, or have fun. It's got to be very either distanced or very small groups. So that's even more challenging than normal.
Right. It is, which is why I always have told people don't wait until someone dies to start asking your theological questions. That's not the right moment to be trying to build that. So I think of it as doing your homework. Be prepared to understand what you think about life and what your values are when you're not facing a crisis. And the same thing is true now. It's very hard to build community from scratch right now. You say, So, but it can be done. For a lot of people, it just means reconnecting with family. That's the first step. But also there are groups online. I mean, our congregations are doing everything online pretty much now, and we're finding ways. We celebrated my 40th anniversary in the ministry with kind of a drive-by celebration where people were in masks, but we get to wave at each other. And we do, like, for our opening service in the fall, traditionally people bring water from someplace special that they went over the summer. And, when we're all there together, we pour it into a fountain, and it brings us together. So this year what we did was people came one by one whenever they could come by church, and we videotaped them pouring their water into the fountain. And we'll do a montage of those videos for our online service a week from Sunday. So, we're finding ways. We're trying to be creative about how to keep people connected. But it is challenging if you haven't been part of a community. On the other hand, it's easier online if there's a group who is interested in Chinese murder mysteries or something. you can find those people, right? Yeah. And it doesn't matter where they are in the world. You can still create connections with them through the online virtual reality. So that's an opportunity we really haven't done as much with in the past because it is so much more satisfying to be together in person. But now, that's the challenge. That's the tool that we have to work with. So how can we be creative and make it effective?
So I have a question for you about having discourse with people who have very definite and opposing views about things. It's really, it's tough these days because people are really dug in and angry, and there sometimes there comes a point where you say, you know what, and I've said this to people on Facebook, let's agree to disagree, because I am not going to change your mind, I'm not going to change mine.
Right.
Do you have any advice on that?
Well, I think that's right, that ultimately we have to respect each other's right to hold our opinions and say, okay, I profoundly disagree, but I am not interested in reconsidering my point of view. I have to respect that you're not interested in reconsidering your point of view. And either we don't have a discussion here because that was the purpose originally, or there's something else that brings us together. We're really here to figure out how to bake bread or something. And so let's get back to whatever that thing was that called us together and leave this topic. I think there is a way to say, I'm interested in hearing more about what you think. Are you interested in having a discussion that actually has some mutuality to it about this? But I think the answer can be no. Yeah. And there's certainly, if someone wants to have a conversation with me about whether racism is real, for instance, that is not a topic in which I'm open to any kind of debate, counter narrative, debate. It's just and I don't want to be rude. I don't want to hurt someone unnecessarily, but I'm also not going to hurt the people who depend on me to have their back on that subject by entertaining, someone else's fantasies about it. Yeah. So I do think we have to have boundaries, and we have to be clear and polite and compassionate about those boundaries. But we're entitled to have them, and we should respect them when other people have them.
Right.
That's so true, because the thing is, there's a fine line between respecting people's opinions but also not giving bad faith ideas room. And I think that's such a wonderful thing you said, because for me it's like we have to set up this boundary. We have to create a fine line, and we have to establish the rules of the discourse. And I think that I'm so glad you said that, because I feel like a lot of people believe that they believe that tolerating ideas also means giving bad wrongdoings, fake facts,
a pass,
or alternative facts, a pass. And it's like, no, do you believe that when it comes to like these toxic aspects of discourse that, is there, I'm trying to figure out a way to word this because it's like, there's so many ways I can ask this, but in this, what is something you would suggest to kind of remove toxicity from your communities?
You make me think of the saying about everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but they're not entitled to their own facts.
Yes.
So there has to be some commitment to a mutual understanding of truth. Yeah. Or proof or reality, or because if you don't have a shared reality, the conversation will in fact make you crazy. That's sort of the definition of craziness, is there's nothing that we share about reality here. So there has to be some sort of premise that you can agree on. And once you have that place to stand on together, then all kinds of things become possible. But if you don't have that to start out with, then I don't see how you can ever move forward. And it's, sometimes because we're a very liberal tradition and we don't have a theological creed, we understand that people are on their own spiritual journey, and that looks very different for different people. And so that sometimes that's identified as saying, "Oh, you can believe whatever you want."
Yeah, we got
Well,
it.
that is not the case.
Kendyl, we got to go. I'm so sorry we're out of time. I love you. Thank you so much for your wisdom.
Oh, you're
visit
welcome
soon.
And have fun with the show. I'm happy to be part of it.
Okay, come visit soon. Love you. All right, we'll be back.
Okay.
On the Culture Corner in just a moment.
You're listening to Bonnie Gilgallon and Brayan Mendoza, talking arts and entertainment on iHub Radio's The Culture Corner. Live from the desert cities of Southern California, here's Brayan and Bonnie.
And welcome back to the Culture Corner. We're about to wrap up our first hour. Wanted to get back to some news, entertainment news. And one of the things that Brayan had mentioned to me earlier was this whole thing about Chadwick Boseman. It was so sad, first of all, to lose someone at that young age to colon cancer. But we were talking about the whole controversy about some of the last pictures he posted on Facebook. He'd lost a lot of weight, and people assumed he was on drugs or whatever. So, talk a little bit about that.
You know, for those of you who don't know, Chadwick Boseman is famous for being Black Panther. My bad. I was going to say he plays the character Black Panther in the movie Black Panther.
Huge movie.
And it wasn't just a one-character movie. He was in other movies like Captain America, and then he was also in the Avengers movie. So the Black Panther character is a popular character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Mm-hmm. And Black Panther is the first superhero movie to be nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars.
And the first African-American superhero, really, right?
Yeah, and the first one to really be aimed at an African-American audience with an understanding of, like, African-American culture, Afrofuturism, and he played Jackie Robinson in 42, James Brown in Get On Up, and then he also played Thurgood Marshall.
Amazing
Marshall.
career, and is relatively short as it was, but amazing career.
Yeah, and he was 43 years old. So to give you guys that context, the last couple months during the pandemic, he had posted a video in support of something, and he looked unusually thin. And now the thing about Hollywood actors is that they kind of have to keep, for superhero movies, they kind of have to keep a certain regimen where they're thin, but they're also toned up. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, they might even have to gain weight for a role. Like a couple other, there was one actor who actually had to get fat because their character gets fat in the role. Mm-hmm. But Chadwick Boseman, when he posted those videos, a lot of people jumped on it, and they went from saying Black Panther, they took a picture of him as Black Panther, and then a picture of him when he was dying, mind you, he was dying, and said Crack Panther. And
it's so awful.
It really is. And like, the thing is, though, a lot of people that I know made these jokes, and then I haven't said anything to them, but I felt that, you know, there's something really off-putting about those jokes, and the way he was really sick looking. Like, looking back at it, he was sick, and he had colon cancer for 4 years.
Never talked about it.
That's true, and he never talked about it. And I do have to say, though, is that there is a place where an actor should definitely keep private about their affairs and all that, but it's also important to kind of not make that the point of their sickness. You know, the fact is that there are plenty of people that are outspoken about being sick, and they're just as wonderful and as strong, worthy of your attention and admiration as someone like Chadwick Boseman, who did keep it to himself. It's okay to like be open about your suffering, and it's also okay to be private about it. It's a
personal choice. That's a very personal choice. Yeah. No, and no one has a right to criticize that. Yeah.
And I definitely agree with that. And also, it tells you a lot that the age of 60 is not the age of cancer. The age of cancer could be any age.
Yeah, kids get cancer, sadly.
And the thing is, though, they actually talked about this. Actually, his death actually sparked a conversation about the fact that the African American community gets
screened for colon cancer. Yeah,
and they get hit pretty hard with it, and that it actually turns out that colon cancer could actually affect young men a little bit more often than we anticipate. So
so that it was he in that way did us a service and left us that legacy in addition to his wonderful film career.
And and the funny thing and the sad thing, though, is that a lot of black boys lost a hero. And it's such an unfortunate thing because when you think about it, black children don't really have that many superheroes. And somebody might say Blade, but when you go back and watch the original 90s Blade, it's an R-rated movie. I don't think...
So it's not really kids. This was more more aimed at kids to a
Yeah.
certain degree. Yeah.
And that's true. And also for a lot of people don't realize that a lot of people who work for Disney, they also do a lot of humanitarian work. They go out to hospitals. The fact is that a lot of these superheroes, they actually go to like hospitals to make kids feel better. And there are videos of Chadwick Boseman at hospitals,
With little kids, yeah.
And so he inspired not only black children on screen, but he inspired a lot of black children just by walking into their hospital room.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. And
Yeah.
for me, it's a really telling story because there's so many things to think about. Like, when do we admire people when they're sick and the reality of sickness? But we also have to think about what someone's death really means to their fans, and especially children who admire them.
I just want to say one thing about the pictures and the comments. As we just said, if you're a well-known person, the decision to be open about whatever illness you're dealing with, again, is very personal. No one's required to tell anybody what they're dealing with. If they choose to and you feel that's going to help someone else, that's fine. That's great. That's your choice. If you don't, that's also your choice. But what really disturbs me is that people feel entitled to make assumptions and judgments about why someone lost a lot of weight. You don't know. None of those people knew that. And just assume, he's on drugs, and make those comments, I think, is just really low class.
And also, I mean, he's a celebrity. For all you know, he has a gym and he actually has a pretty good diet.
Or maybe he had another role coming up where he had to be skinny. You don't know.
True. There's so many possibilities, and I think that it's important to realize you are not always correct in your assumptions.
Exactly.
And it kind of tells me that people forget history, because Rock Hudson, when he was on Dynasty, which is his final role, everyone made commentary about him looking bad, that he looked terrible and that he was awful. And they made a lot of assumptions about him kissing Linda Evans. And then guess what? It turned out to all be incorrect. And so it tells me a lot about, if you see an actor and they look a little different or they're sick, maybe you should keep an eye out for them, because they might die or because they are sick.
And don't assume that unless you're their mate or live in their family, you don't know. You don't know what's going on with them.
No, that's true, because the fact is that celebrities have a personal life too, and
they're entitled to it. Yeah,
that's true, because the fact is that their personal life is already compromised to some extent. The fact that if they show up in public with someone, everyone will assume they're dating.
Yeah.
Or if they're at a certain venue, for example, let's say there's a straight actor and they go to an LGBT event, then a lot of people,
he's gay. Yeah.
He's gay.
Yeah.
Or let's say a woman decides to post a provocative photo for her friends, like a beach photo, and then everyone jumps on and make catcalls. Yeah. There are so many. It's difficult being a celebrity to that extent. I know that, we like to think, they're rich.
They wanted to be famous. They wanted this. But you know what? They're still entitled to respect and privacy as a human being, up to a point. Their private life is their private life.
No, I agree with that. And I think it's important to realize that there is a fine line between being invasive and speculating.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Chadwick Boseman, thank you for your films and your legacy. Rest in peace. All right, we're going to be back with the second hour of the Culture Corner in just a bit.